Austin, my chest isn't growing. I've been hitting it, 2-3 times a week. I've been doing some flies. I've been doing some incline. I've been doing some flat bench. I throw some dumbbells in there.
But wait a second. How many reps are you doing?
Reps? What do you mean reps?
Okay. See, that exact thing is what people get wrong. Because people think that there's a secret sauce to success. There's a secret thing to succeed in whatever it is that you want to do. But I'd feel like a large percentage of success in whatever, getting a bigger chest, what have you, is the reps that you put in. Now, to really kind of emphasize this point here, Jose, how many podcasts do we have right now? What number are we on?
As of right now, the number of podcasts that we're on, this is episode 84.
84. And if you can recall, what is the number that people normally quit at?
20.
20, right?
20 podcasts.
Gotcha. So we went from 1 to 20. Most people quit around 20, right? Because they realize, this shit is harder than what I thought, and I'm not seeing the traction that I thought I would have. Then we went from 20 all the way to 84. That, my friends, is 64 more reps of podcasting. Now, it's different than a layup. You putting a rep in for a layup is you just going up there, you're shooting the layup. You just putting it up, right? It's not the hardest thing. But when you're putting in reps for a podcast, it's a little different. You're filming said podcast for however long we're doing it. So let's just say around 30 minutes each podcast, while trying to optimize those reps each podcast. Not just doing the rep, but making sure that you have good technique doing the rep.
Mm-hmm.
That, plus the rep itself, increases the overall result. So when you see us at episode 84, the 84th rep, you would say, wow, I remember that episode 1. They sound and look and just the overall podcast just looks completely different. You know why that is? Because we put in the reps. We put in the work that most people quit doing at episode 20. They quit on the 20th rep. However, we know that this is a game of repetition. Life is a game of repetition. Success is a game of repetition. So in order to do what we need and want to do, we know that we have to put in the reps. So Jose,
I'm going to harken back to a quote from Alex Hormozy that we've already beaten to the ground, but we will continue to do so because that's just how good it is.
Yeah, you need reps with your quotes too.
Exactly. And you know what's interesting about that? There's a quote from Heraclitus off the top of my mind that is, a man cannot pass through the same river twice, for he is not the same man, nor is the river the same.
Ooh.
And that is on topic with what you just said. That wasn't the Alex Hormozy quote, but the reason I mentioned that is because you said you have to repeat your quotes. And in truth be told, quotes can mean different things to you at different times because you're not the same that you were, and the quote no longer means the same to you.
Very true.
So not everything ages and everything changes, and so do we, and hopefully all for the better. But if not, life goes on. So oftentimes it's not that we do the wrong thing, it's that we aren't doing enough of the thing. So when we started this podcast and I was telling Austin, hey, my chest isn't growing, and he asked me, well, how many reps are you doing? If you notice, the way I was retorting was, oh, I'm doing this exercise, I'm doing this exercise, I'm doing this exercise. I didn't mention how many sets, I didn't mention how many reps, I didn't mention how much weight, which is the most important thing. And a lot of people really miss this component, and you know, we're guilty of this too at times, where we're focused on not the problem itself, What is the...
I have a Austin quote right here for you.
All right, hit us with the Austin quote.
You're focused on the fruits, not the roots.
Bars.
Boom, boom, boom.
Come here.
Yeah.
I love you. We're not going to say that one yet, but shout out to West Side Gun.
Shout out West Side Gun, man.
You're focused on the fruits, not the roots. You're focused on treating the symptoms, not the cause.
Right.
You're focused on the superficial things. What exercise am I doing? Not the quality. You're focused on, and again, harken back to quality and quantity. You can have one or the other, but you're better off having both. Having the right or the best exercise that fits your muscles and the way your muscles are structured and your training regimen, and also having the quantity on top of that is the ideal scenario. And everybody just wants to focus on, oh, is this the right fruit? Is this the right fruit? Is this the right fruit? It's the same thing with how people pursue goals nowadays, especially. It's, oh, I want to be an influencer. Why? Have you asked yourself truly, is that the lifestyle that you want to live? Or are you just doing it for the clout? Are you just doing it because you saw somebody do it and somebody succeed at it and you think the lifestyle is relatively cool? Well, I hate to break it to you, but you're making the repetitions even more difficult for yourself if you don't understand the reason why you're going into something. Because repetition is something that you can really only maximize your reps if it's something that you're truly aligned with. Because you can sit here and try to play basketball with a lacrosse ball all you want. But the fact of the matter remains that lacrosse ball is not manufactured for basketball, and those hoops aren't made for a lacrosse ball to go through, especially the way you're trying to do it. So it's the same thing. If you have the wrong reason or the wrong why or the wrong motivation behind a goal that you're trying to attempt, your repetitions are going to be off. They're never going to be at the right level that you need them to be at. You might get good, you might become great, but you're not going to be excellent. You're not going to be the best. And you're sure as hell not going to enjoy the process at the end looking back, because you're going to feel like you were trying to put a circle in a square. And that's just not what life is about.
Not at all.
But you look like you have something interesting coming up, Austin. Are you prepared?
I am.
All right, let's hear it.
So I was listening to Tony Robbins earlier today, and he basically said that we're a function of our patterns. So we've talked about this kind of before as far as your neural pathways and how when you do something over and over and over again, these patterns begin to arrange themselves and build in your mind. So you, even if you don't want to do something, even if you say, hey man, I wish I could just stop doing this. Like, hey, if you smoke cigarettes, you want to quit cigarettes, but you built this pattern, you built up this habit to the point to where it's hard to break. And you do this, you build these patterns, you build these habits through a multitude of reps. So I would like to call out that these reps can be used for good and for bad. Just like with everything in life, with the things that are happening in our lives these days, we choose to see them as a positive. Most people see them as a negative, but we choose to see them as a positive. We choose to use them for good. So when you have access to these things called repetitions, reps, you can use them for good or for bad. So if you have something that's going on in your life where, let's just say, you feel lazy, you feel like a lazy bump on a log, right? That means that you're using your power of repetition for negative. You're choosing to continuously do the same negative, lazy activity over and over and over again. But if you were listening to what I was saying, the repetition, the reps are up to you. It's your choice for what you can use these repetitions for. So you can use them to tear down, to break, or you can use them to build. So just like if you have a multitude of reps to build a negative habit, you can do the same to build a positive habit. So when you're trying to do something, when you're trying to change, when you're trying to build something, use and think of the reps, think of the repetitions in order to do that thing. So if you want to, again, I'll take it back to basketball. You want to get better at basketball. You want to become a better shooter. Think about the reps that you're putting in. Now, I believe, let's say, who would you say the best shooter today is, Jose?
Probably Stephen Curry still.
Okay, let's see. Steph Curry, huh?
Yeah.
So in that case, let's see.
What's his shooting percentage, field goal percentage?
Well,
from the 3-point line.
He says that a day at practice that Steph Curry puts up 300 to 400 shots per day. 300 to 400 reps per day.
And that sounds like an understatement. It honestly does.
So I'll take it back to when I was shooting the basketball, because I feel like you put up more reps in that than me. When I was shooting a basketball, I'd probably put up 50 to 100 shots. And it wasn't every day either. Only at practice that we had to go to. And then sometimes outside of it, would I put up that many, 50 to 100 reps. So when my outcome was, okay, you're a shitty shooter, it wasn't because the technique was off. At a certain point, my technique got right. It wasn't because the rim that they had was a different rim than what I was used to shooting on. No, the rim was good. It wasn't because I was nervous in shooting in front of people. I played in front of people before. The main problem was that I didn't put up nearly enough reps. Growing up, if I said I want to be like Steph Curry, I want to be like Ray Allen when it comes to shooting, that thought is it's illogical. We don't think about how many reps they're putting in and how much less I am putting in compared to them. So when you're thinking of something that you're trying to do, you're like, hey, I want to be great, or I want to get better at this. Think about how many reps that you have to do in order to get there. It may be 5, or it may be 6 in our case, or it may be 20 for a certain thing. But don't focus on the outcome. Don't say, hey, I want to get abs that pop out. Focus on, okay, how many reps do I have to do on a consistent basis to make sure that my abs grow to the point to where they do pop out? If you focus on that, you focus on the roots, not the fruits, then your tree will, by just continuation, will bear fruits, if you think of it that way.
So, let me talk about something that in the past I've tried to mention but completely botched because I didn't have notes in front of me. If you really want to see a Jose fumbling the ball, scroll back to like episode 8 and listen to our podcast on the Medici family, where Austin just sat there like, I don't know who the Medici family is, but I'm here. And Jose, you take the mic, and I'm over here like, I'm like the gentleman that you were referring to in the previous podcast, who was just sweating buckets, couldn't recall the speech, and like, you got it. And he's like, yeah, that's basically how I was. And I admit that. I definitely admit that I wasn't prepared for that podcast. Also, I didn't have speaker notes because we weren't as serious as we are now. But let me tell you one of the most inspiring things that I've read, and I didn't read it until last year. And to me, this is absolutely eye-opening. It completely changed my perspective on time and how we dedicate our time towards tasks. And it gave me a very, very different mindset when it comes to approaching anything. So, Lorenzo Ghiberti spent 21 years perfecting bronze doors of the Florence Baptistry on a commission from Giovanni de' Medici. Now, Michelangelo would later call these doors the gates of paradise, being as he saw them fitting to be the gates to heaven itself. If Michelangelo says your art is good, it's fucking good. Now, the reason I bring this up is imagine casting, recasting, and recasting, working, reworking, and reworking the same fucking bronze piece for 21 fucking years. And we can't even focus on one task for more than half a year, let alone a year. Imagine sitting there for 21 years working on one 2-panel door made out of bronze and perfecting it. Nothing but that. That, in Robert Greene's terms, would be mastery. To me, there is no greater example of repetition, patience, perseverance, and pride when it comes to work than Lorenzo Ghiberti, at least nothing that comes to mind. To me, this is always a humbling story, a humbling, we'll say, recollection of sorts, where anytime I find myself upset or impatient or feeling entitled for something to come faster than it is coming, for expecting success with less amounts of work, I always remember Lorenzo and his 21 years on a singular bronze 2-panel door. How much agony do you think he went through? Do you think he slept well at night for 21 years? Even when it was done, do you think that he truly believed it was the best it could be? Just think about everything that he lived through. 21 years is a ridiculous amount of time to spend on one task.
But you know what is even more ridiculous than that?
What is?
Each of us actually has something that we work on longer than that. One might say our own bronze doors. You know what that is?
What is it?
Our body.
Oh, tell it to him, Austin.
So Lorenzo worked on that for 21 years. But for most of us, God willing, are on earth for much longer than that. And like Lorenzo, you should choose to work on that on a consistent daily basis. And I want to harken back to what you were talking about as far as your chest growing, right? Mm-hmm. People might say, hey, I have a bird chest. Why is my chest not growing? So we've talked about this before, but we we do 200 push-ups a day, at least. So that's a good amount of reps. But when you think about it, 200 push-ups in a week, every day, is 1,400 push-ups. It's a good amount of reps. Mm-hmm. In a month, that's 5,600 push-ups. It's a lot of reps. So when you think about the outcome that we have, when you see our chest versus your chest, and the doors, the bronze doors that we have crafted to build up to look like, Lorenzo's greatest work that he took 21 years to build.
The gates to paradise.
The gates to paradise, which are our bodies. When you think about that, and you're like, damn, how the hell did they get the gates to paradise? Well, it wasn't because we got lucky. It wasn't because we just stumbled upon the materials. It wasn't because somebody gave us a cheat code. No.
And it sure as hell wasn't because we had an amazing trip on shrooms that made us the most creative tapping into the fucking...
That's for damn sure. Definitely not doing that. You know what it was, though? Just like Lorenzo, repetition after repetition after repetition. We put in the work. We put in the reps. So while we're doing 5,600 push-ups a month, you might be doing 300, 500, if that. So when you see someone else with the gates of paradise, when you see someone else with a work that Michelangelo himself would say, wow, this is mastery. When you see someone else with the things that you want, it's not a fact of, oh, they're just better. More often than not, it's a fact of repetition. Now, Jose, I see this quote that you have here, and I would like you to read it to end the podcast, because since we're talking about the, old greats of humankind, this person in particular is one of the best. So please, could you give the audience this quote?
I realize I don't have the entire quote, so let me add the entire quote because I think my boy and I jive if I add the entire quote.
Gotcha.
So, to close the podcast off, I have a quote from Socrates. No man has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical training. It is a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable.
But wasn't Socrates a philosopher? Why is he talking? He's talking about physical training.
Socrates was jacked.
Wow.
Everybody, almost everybody in Greco-Roman times were wrestlers, boxers, hunters, athletes. Every emperor that you can imagine, jacked to the fucking T. Even Epictetus, having been a slave, was built. Socrates, built. Zeno, built. Almost anybody you can think of. Why? Because like any great philosopher understood that everything began with the body. And the body is in tune with the mind.
Right.
If you train the mind, you train the body. If you train the body, you train the mind. Exactly. And it's simply repetition, repetition, repetition. Those reps that you're hitting in the gym are training your brain. Those reps that you're hitting in the tasks are training your body.
And this is very true because we said this a while ago. I don't know if it was on the podcast or off. But we said, if you look at a man's outward appearance, it's a reflection of his internal discipline. If you look at someone with a great physique, more often than not, it was because they disciplined themselves internally more than anything else. So I think that was a perfect quote. And again, not too many people realize that. I think you told me that a lot of the old philosophers were not just great in mind, but they were great in physique as well, which most people wouldn't, stop and think about.
Why do you think all the Roman statues are just jacked motherfuckers, butt-ass naked? Because they appreciated the human body in its naked form. And with that, the AM Club podcast.
Fuck. Sign it out. Mic check.
The AM Club podcast.